He thought it would be an ordinary afternoon. A millionaire, successful and respected, walking into the comfort of his home earlier than usual. But behind those walls, he discovered something that shook him to his core. A sight so cruel, it left him frozen. His own wife, someone he trusted, was standing over the maid's little daughter, not with kindness, but with violence. In that moment, his world shattered, and a hidden truth about power, prejudice, and cruelty came to light. What he did next would not only change their lives, but expose something far darker than anyone imagined. It started like any other day. The air was calm. The streets were alive with the sounds of children playing and neighbors chatting. For Marcus, it was routine. Finish work, walk the same familiar road, and head home to his family. He wasn't rich. He wasn't powerful. Just an ordinary man with simple dreams. Marcus loved his community. He knew almost everyone by name, stopped to wave at Mrs. Johnson watering her plants, and smiled as kids rode by on their bikes. His life was far from perfect, but it was his, a life built on small joys and everyday moments. But beneath the surface of that normal evening, something darker waited. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of orange, a car rolled slowly behind him. At first he thought nothing of it, just another driver on the road. But when it passed once, then circled back again, his steps grew heavier. The street that always felt safe now felt strange, silent, watching. Marcus adjusted his bag, trying to shake the unease. He told himself it was nothing, but deep down, he couldn't ignore the tension building in his chest. Something was coming, something he couldn't yet see, but it was already changing everything. And in just a few steps, Marcus's ordinary night would turn into a fight for his dignity, his safety, and perhaps even his life. The house had always been quiet at this hour. Normally, the millionaire would return late when the corridors were still, and his wife had already settled into her evening rituals. But today was different. He stepped into the marble-floored hall earlier than expected, his footsteps echoing through the silence. At first, he thought nothing of it. Just another day, just another return, until he heard it. A muffled sound, sharp and desperate. It wasn't laughter, it wasn't conversation. It was the sound of a child's cry. He followed the noise, each step heavier than the last, until he reached the back of the house where the staff lived. The door was half open. He pushed it gently, and what he saw stopped him cold. His wife, elegant, poised, the woman who carried herself with grace in front of society, stood over the maid's young daughter. Her face twisted with rage, her foot pressing down on the trembling child. The girl, no more than 8 years old, cried silently, her tiny hands trying to shield herself from blows she could not escape. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. His mind struggled to piece together the scene. Why? Why would his wife, his partner, hurt an innocent child? And then it struck him. The maid was black. Her daughter was black. And the cruelty unfolding before his eyes wasn't born from anger alone. It was born from something far uglier. The girl whimpered, her voice cracking as she whispered for her mother. But the maid was nowhere to be seen, likely busy with chores. Alone, helpless, the child bore the weight of hatred she could never understand. The millionaire's heart pounded. Every instinct told him to intervene, to shout, to end it right there. But something kept him frozen, a disbelief that this was real, that the woman he had shared his life with was capable of such cold violence. His wife's words cut through the air like a blade, bitter, venomous, laced with the poison of superiority. She spat out insults, degrading the girl's very existence, as if her skin, her heritage, made her less than human. And with each word, the millionaire felt a rage build inside him. A rage not just at the act itself, but at the realization of what it meant, that the walls of his home had been harboring a truth he had never seen. The girl's sobs grew weaker. The wife pressed harder. And in that chilling moment, the millionaire knew he couldn't stay silent any longer. His voice, sharp and commanding, filled the room. His wife jerked back in shock, caught in the act, her mask of civility shattered. The child curled into the corner, clutching herself, wide-eyed and trembling. But this was only the beginning. Because the decision he would make next, whether to defend innocence or to protect his reputation, would define not just his household, but everything he stood for. The room hung in silence, the air thick with shock. His wife's face drained of color, caught in the act she could no longer hide. The little girl trembled in the corner, clutching her knees, too terrified to move. The millionaire's voice cracked the silence like thunder. He demanded answers, but there were none. Only excuses, only venom. His wife's eyes burned with defiance, as though she still believed her cruelty was justified, as though the child's pain meant nothing. The girl's sobs echoed through the walls, a sound that would haunt him forever. In that moment, the millionaire realized this wasn't just an act of violence. It was a mirror reflecting a deeper sickness, one festering within the very people he thought he knew. Racism wasn't out there, in the streets or in whispered conversations. It was here, in his own home. His wife lashed back, spewing words so vile that even he, a man hardened by years of wealth and status, felt his chest tighten with shame. Every insult she hurled at the child was a knife, cutting into the fragile innocence of someone who had done nothing but exist. The girl's wide, tear-streaked eyes searched for safety, for compassion, for someone to protect her. And he knew, if he stood silent now, he would be no different from the cruelty he despised. The millionaire stepped forward, his decision burning inside him. This was no longer about marriage, reputation, or appearances. This was about humanity, about a child who deserved dignity and love. His voice roared through the house, a declaration that shattered every illusion. Not in my home. Not ever again. The wife froze, disbelief washing over her as her power slipped away. The girl, still shaking, looked up at him with a glimmer of hope. And in that instant, he knew. This was the moment everything would change. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the sound of the child's faint sobs. The millionaire lifted the little girl into his arms, her fragile frame trembling as though even kindness felt unfamiliar. His wife stood frozen, her authority crumbling under the weight of truth. For years, she had hidden behind wealth and social grace. But now her cruelty was laid bare, undeniable. The maid arrived moments later, her face etched with terror as she saw her daughter clinging to him. She expected blame, dismissal, perhaps even silence. But instead, she found something different. The millionaire's voice carried not anger for her, but for the injustice that had unfolded under his own roof. He assured her that neither she nor her child would ever again face such hatred in his home. It wasn't just a promise to them. It was a vow to himself. He could no longer turn away, no longer allow racism to live quietly behind closed doors. That day forced him to confront a truth. Silence is complicity. To look away is to participate. And for a man who had built empires, this was the one empire he refused to let stand. The empire of hate. The wife's downfall was swift. Friends whispered, reputations shattered, and the facade of perfection collapsed. But for the millionaire, the lesson was far greater than scandal. He realized that wealth, status, and power mean nothing if they protect cruelty. True power lies in defending the vulnerable, in standing against injustice, even when it's close, even when it hurts. And as the child slowly stopped crying, her small eyes meeting his with trust, he knew that what happened that day wasn't just about a household. It was about a world where countless others endure the same pain. The question that lingers is this: how many more hidden stories must surface before we finally say, enough?